Imagine you're 7 years old
Okay.
and you have been sitting in this hard wooden chair all morning. You've wrestled with math problems, you've practiced writing complex characters in your little notebook, you've run around a dusty courtyard for 45 minutes during gym class,
Sounds exhausting.
right? And crucially, you have not had a single snack since you left your house at like 7:30 in the morning. No mid-morning granola bar, no sneaky handful of goldfish crackers, nothing.
Wow.
You are absolutely positively starving. I mean, your stomach isn't just rumbling, it is roaring. You are super hyper-focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is food.
Yeah, the singular burning desire of a hungry 7-year-old. I mean, it's a powerful force.
Exactly. But before you can finally eat, you don't just run down to a cafeteria and grab a plastic tray. You have to undergo this complete physical and mental transformation.
Wait, what do you mean?
You put on a crisp white lab coat, a hairnet, and a surgical face mask. You literally wash your hands with the precision of a surgeon scrubbing in for an operation. And then you have to coordinate with like 5 other kids your exact age to serve a multi-course, nutritionally perfect, beautifully plated meal to 30 of your peers.
Just casually.
Right. And you have to do it by navigating this massive, incredibly heavy metal cart full of scalding hot soup down a bustling hallway without spilling a single drop.
I mean, when you lay it out like that, it sounds like an extreme reality television challenge. Or, I don't know, a final exam at an avant-garde culinary institute.
Right. You expect Gordon Ramsay to just jump out from behind a chalkboard and start yelling. But it's not a TV show. It is literally just Tuesday in Japan.
Yeah.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We're exploring the completely fascinating, mouth-watering, and highly regimented world of the Japanese school lunch system. It is known as Kyushoku.
It really is an incredible system.
It is. We are going to unpack how a nation took a simple midday meal and engineered it into this absolute masterclass in public health, community building, and honestly, culinary excellence.
And we're going really deep on this one today. We've got a massive stack of sources.
Tons of them.
Yeah, we're looking at everything from global childhood obesity studies and macroeconomic impacts to historical culinary breakthroughs and even firsthand accounts from foreign teachers working right in the middle of Tokyo.
It's so good.
And the overarching theme here, the mission of this deep dive, is really about a fundamental shift in perspective. It's about viewing lunchtime not as a break from education, but, as one of the most vital educational periods of the entire day.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I promise you, by the time we are done here, you, the listener, you're going to want to book a flight to Tokyo, somehow sneak into an elementary school, put on a tiny white apron, and just sit at a desk to get a tray of this food.
You really will. I mean, the gap between the Western expectation of school food and the Japanese reality is, well, it's staggering.
Big.
Exactly. So
Okay.
to truly appreciate the mechanics of Kyushoku, we really need to establish a baseline first. We have to look at what you, the listener, probably experienced growing up.
Let's go right there. If you grew up in the US, especially in the 90s or 2000s, just think back to your elementary or middle school cafeteria.
Boy.
Picture that environment. It is essentially a chaotic, fluorescent-lit mall food court.
Right. Yeah, deafeningly loud.
So loud. You've got hundreds of kids just released from captivity all at once. You grab that damp, slightly warm plastic tray, you slide it down those metal tubular rails, and you are immediately faced with a series of negotiations.
And, well, those negotiations are almost entirely based on instant gratification.
100%. You look at the warming trays, you pick the greasy rectangular pizza slice over the incredibly sad wilted iceberg lettuce salad.
True.
Maybe you grab a breaded chicken patty sandwich, a scoop of crinkle-cut fries, and a cardboard carton of chocolate milk. You take your haul to a long folding table, you sit with your friends, and the secondary market opens up.
The trading phase.
Yes. You trade your chocolate chip cookie for someone else's bag of chips. You immediately throw away the apple you were forced to put on your tray.
Right into the trash.
The defining characteristic of the American school lunch experience is choice. Individual autonomy absolutely rules the cafeteria. But I have to ask, why did Japan completely eliminate choice from the menu, and how is it impacting the kids?
Well, it's a great question, because that American model, which perfectly reflects broader American cultural values where freedom of choice is paramount, it actually leads to some pretty tough outcomes.
Yeah, the data is not great.
No, it paints a very grim picture. The U.S. National School Lunch Program, the NSLP, serves upwards of 29 million children every single day.
29 million.
Yeah, it is a massive logistical undertaking. But it operates within a framework that is constantly starved for funding, relying heavily on economies of scale.
And the easiest way to achieve those economies of scale is through heavily processed, prepackaged foods. I mean, it is infinitely cheaper and it requires far less labor to heat up 1,000 frozen pizzas in a massive commercial oven than it is to, hire a team to chop fresh raw vegetables for 1,000 students.
Precisely. The logistical path of least resistance has led to this structural reliance on food that is highly processed. Now, schools do have specific calorie and nutrient baseline requirements they have to meet to secure their federal funding.
Right.
But hitting those baselines using processed foods frequently results in terrifyingly high levels of added sugars, sodium, and chemical preservatives.
Wild.
To give you some context on how slow the system is to adapt, the USDA is only just now beginning to phase in regulations specifically targeting added sugars in school lunches. And those won't even start taking real effect until 2025 and beyond.
That is just wild to think about. We've had decades of essentially unregulated sugar content disguised as nutrition. And the lack of variety, it's shocking. I was looking at one of the comparative studies from our sources that track the daily offerings. It found that the average U.S. school lunch presents a student with only 5.3 different food items per day.
5.3 items, so that's a main dish, a side, a drink, maybe a piece of fruit, and a condiment.
Right. And out of those 5.3 items, vegetables make up a microscopic 15% of the total meal volume.
15% is practically a garnish.
It is.
It's a few baby carrots rolling around next to a cheeseburger or, the tomato paste on the pizza, which notoriously was classified as a vegetable for administrative purposes for a long time.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about the pizza vegetable thing. And we all know what happens to those baby carrots anyway. They end up straight in the trash can.
Exactly.
So, when you combine a diet that is low in variety, low in fresh vegetables, high in processed fats and sugars, and then you pair it with a culture that allows the child to simply opt out of eating anything green, well, the result is a public health crisis. The childhood obesity rate in the U.S. is currently hovering over 20%, 1 in 5 kids.
It's a systemic failure. And this is exactly where the Japanese counter-approach provides such a jarring, illuminating contrast. Japan boasts one of the lowest childhood obesity rates in the entire developed world. It fluctuates slightly, but it sits right around 4.5%.
20% versus 4.5%. That is not a marginal improvement. That is an entirely different universe of public health.
It really is. And Japan's success isn't some happy accident of genetics or geography. It is the result of a highly cohesive, aggressively proactive system. Japanese school lunches aren't just thrown together based on what's cheapest in the frozen food catalog.
Right.
Every single meal is meticulously calculated by a certified on-site nutritionist. Let's look at that variety metric again. The U.S. offers 5.3 items. A typical Japanese school lunch offers 10.5 different foods per day.
Double the variety.
Exactly double. They're incorporating multiple small side dishes, varied protein sources, fermented foods, complex carbohydrates, and the vegetable content. Vegetables comprise a massive 51% of the Japanese school meal.
Over half the tray is vegetables. And here's the kicker, the thing that completely blew my mind when I was researching this. The kids are actually eating them, all of them.
Yeah, they are.
And that brings us right back to the concept of choice, or rather the complete elimination of it. Because in a Japanese elementary school, the cafeteria just does not exist.
Nope.
It's not a room in the building. There is no lunch line. There is no buffet. There is no a la carte menu where a kid can say, you know what, I'm going to skip the braised daikon radish today and just double down on the potato croquettes.
The entire school operates as a single nutritional unit. From the trainiest first grader to the tallest sixth grader, right up to the homeroom teachers and the school principal, every single person in that building eats the exact same menu on the exact same day. Zero choice.
It is a profound cultural difference. Everyone eats together, but they don't do it in a massive dining hall. They do it in their homeroom bell rings. They push those exact same desks together to form little pods or groups. They spread out these little cloth placemats that they bring from home, and it suddenly feels less like a sterile institutional feeding trough and more like a family dinner table.
And we have to talk about the economics of this, because making a 10.5 item, 51% vegetable, locally sourced meal sounds incredibly expensive.
It sounds like it would cost a fortune.
But it's not. Thanks to robust government subsidies at both the national and municipal levels, parents pay roughly 250 to 300 yen a day. Depending on exchange rates, that's somewhere between, $1.70 and $2.50 for a restaurant-quality, nutritionally optimized meal.
Under $3 a day. You can't even buy a bad cup of coffee for $3 in the U.S. right now.
Exactly. And for lower-income families, there are comprehensive assistance programs that cover that cost entirely. The sociological impact of this cannot be overstated. There was a brilliant long-term study conducted by Sophia University in Tokyo that looked at the universal nature of this system.
Oh yeah, I read that one.
Yeah, they found that providing this identical, balanced meal every single weekday significantly reduces obesity among teenagers, but specifically it flattens the health disparities between different socioeconomic classes.
That makes perfect sense. Food insecurity and reliance on cheap processed calories disproportionately affect lower-income families.
Exactly. The Kushoka system bridges that gap. On school days, children from low-income households are consuming the exact same level of essential vitamins, minerals, and complex carbohydrates as their peers from the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. It is the ultimate societal leveler. For that one meal a day, economic inequality effectively ceases to exist.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful concept. But, it brings up a very practical boots-on-the-ground question.
Sure.
You and I both know children. You can put a beautifully plated piece of grilled fish and a side of spinach tossed in sesame sauce in front of a 7-year-old, but you cannot magically force them to eat it, especially if they have the palate of a typical kid.
Sure.
So if you're offering a plate that is half vegetables and the kid has absolutely no alternative options, how do you get them to willingly clean their plate?
You leverage biology.
Yes, this is where the methodology gets a little, ruthless, but it is undeniably effective. The hangry factor.
The hangry factor, exactly.
I was reading a first-hand account from an American teacher who spent years working in Tokyo elementary schools, and she highlighted this detail that completely recontextualized the whole system for me. Japanese elementary schools strictly forbid snacks. It is a zero-tolerance policy.
None whatsoever.
You cannot bring a granola bar in your backpack. You cannot bring a bag of pretzels. You cannot even bring an apple for recess. And this doesn't just start in elementary school. Even down in the kindergarten levels, the educators actively begin weaning the kids off their morning and afternoon snacks.
Yeah, it is a deliberate physiological conditioning.
Right. By the time these kids graduate to the first grade, their metabolisms are entirely accustomed to fasting completely between breakfast at 7 a.m. and lunch at 12:30 p.m.
It's a calculated strategy to build anticipation and appetite. By the time noon rolls around, these children are not casually wondering what's for lunch. They are intensely physically famished.
The American teacher joked that she desperately wanted to teach her first graders the English slang word hangry because it was the only word that accurately described the energy in the room during the 15 minutes before the lunch bell rang.
I can only imagine.
She said the kids were practically vibrating with hunger. They were staring at the clock, completely laser-focused.
Which is exactly the state you want them in. When a child is truly hungry, their pickiness just evaporates. The spinach doesn't look like a punishment anymore, it looks like fuel.
Exactly. And that intense hunger is the engine that drives the next phase of the process. Because remember, there is no cafeteria line to walk through, and there are no lunch ladies standing behind a counter ready to dish out the food. The food is downstairs in the central kitchen. The kids are upstairs in their classrooms.
And this is where the logistical brilliance of the system shines. How do you safely, efficiently, and simultaneously distribute hundreds of complex, multi-dish meals to separate classrooms without a massive paid serving staff?
Right. My favorite analogy for this is to imagine a Michelin star restaurant. A beautiful dining room, complex menus, high standard.
Okay.
Now imagine the restaurant fires its entire front-of-house staff. The waiters, the bussers, the maitre d', and replaces them entirely with a rotating crew of 6-year-olds.
Oh.
It sounds like absolute madness. Are we genuinely trusting first graders with vats of boiling hot miso soup? How does this not end in third-degree burns, tears, and a hallway slipping hazard of catastrophic proportions?
Well, it doesn't end in disaster because of a deeply ingrained, culturally reinforced system of duty called the Kishoku Toban, or the school lunch duty. In the vast majority of Japanese public schools, there are no janitors trailing behind the kids to sweep up crumbs, and there are no cafeteria workers plating the food. The students themselves are the infrastructure.
Wow.
They take turns, usually rotating on a weekly basis, being on the lunch duty team.
They undergo that physical transformation I mentioned in the intro.
Yes. When the bell rings, the designated Toban team springs into action. They don the white smocks, They put on the hats or hair nets to ensure no stray hairs fall into the food, and they secure their face masks to maintain a sterile environment. They transform from students into a highly focused miniature culinary staff.
The first-hand accounts of this are just incredible. I want to paint this scene for you, the listener, because it is equal parts hilarious, terrifying, and adorable.
It really is a sight.
Imagine a gaggle of 6 first graders. They are maybe 3.5 feet tall. They've scrubbed their hands. They're swimming in these oversized white coats. Their mission is to leave their classroom, march down to the central kitchen on the ground floor, and retrieve their homeroom's food.
And we must emphasize, this is not a light load.
Not at all. They're not carrying a few plastic trays. They are tasked with taking control of a massive, heavy, industrial metal trolley. And loaded onto this trolley is a huge steel vat of hot soup, a massive insulated container holding enough rice for 30 people, heavy metal trays of side dishes, and 30 individual thick glass bottles of milk. The cart probably weighs more than 2 of the kids combined.
The physics of the situation are completely against them.
Entirely. These kids are so small and the cart is so disproportionately heavy that they physically lack the leverage to push it in a straight line. The American teacher described watching them navigate the hallway, and she said it was like watching a pinball machine.
A pinball machine?
Yeah, they push with all their might, the cart veers hard to the left, and bam, they crash into the wall. They stop, they wipe their brows, they have a deeply serious, hushed, strategic meeting about their steering technique. They recalibrate, push again, and veer hard into the right wall. Bam. They literally zigzag and bounce their way down the corridor.
Now, stop and think about that image. It raises a fascinating question about pedagogy and adult intervention. The foreign teacher noted in her account how every instinct in her body, every Western educational reflex, was screaming at her to step in.
Absolutely.
She desperately wanted to grab the handle, straighten the cart out, and just push it to the classroom for them.
Because in an American school, an adult would swoop in immediately, the liability alone. A teacher would run over and say, "Oh my goodness, let me get this, it's too heavy, you're gonna spill the soup."
Right.
But in Japan, the teachers just stand in the hallway, their hands firmly clasped behind their backs, watching these tiny children repeatedly slam a cart of soup into the wall, and they just nod and say, "Ganbate, do your best."
Because the adults understand that the struggle is the entire point. If the adult grabs the handle, the cart gets to the room faster, but the lesson is entirely destroyed. This right here is the physical manifestation of shokuku.
Let's define shokuku, because it is the foundational philosophy behind everything we are talking about today.
Right. Shokuku translates directly to food and nutrition education, but it's much more profound than just a health class. It is an all-encompassing social philosophy that was actually codified into national law in Japan in 2005 with the Shokuku Basic Act.
They actually made it a law.
Yes, they did. In the early 2000s, there was a growing national concern in Japan about the encroachment of Western fast food, rising lifestyle diseases, and a loss of traditional dietary culture. So the government didn't just put out guidelines, they passed a law mandating that schools must teach children how to eat, how to understand food sources, and how to take responsibility for their nutrition.
That's amazing.
Shokuku treats lunchtime not as a recess, but as a core component of the academic curriculum, just as important as math or science.
So the hallway struggle isn't the logistical failure, it's a practical exam.
Exactly. Wrestling that heavy cart down the hallway teaches spatial awareness, physical coordination, teamwork, communication, and above all, resilience. It teaches them that contributing to the community requires physical effort.
And there is a brilliant piece of architectural logistics tied to this that I absolutely love. Because the first graders struggle so mightily with the cart, the schools are generally designed so that the first grade classrooms are located physically closest to the central kitchen.
Yes.
The sixth grade classrooms are situated the furthest away, often up several flights of stairs.
It's progressive overload.
Yes. As the kids age, as they grow taller, build muscle, and improve their coordination, the physical challenge of retrieving the food scales up with them. It's like a built-in video game leveling system, but for carrying soup.
It's brilliant design. And once they finally successfully navigate the cart into their classroom, the operation shifts from brute force to precision. Remember, while the Tobin team was navigating the hallway, the rest of the class wasn't just goofing off.
No, they were getting ready.
Right, they're prepping the dining room, desks are grouped, hands are washed, and every student lays out a personal cloth placemat they've brought from home. They sit quietly, hands folded, waiting.
And then the serving begins. The lunch duty kids stand behind the cart with ladles and tongs. And this is where they learn complex math and spatial reasoning. They have to look at a vat of soup, look at 30 empty bowls and calculate the exact volume of liquid they could distribute so that the 30th kid gets the exact same amount of tofu and broth as the first kid. Portion control is entirely in their hands.
And the classroom environment during the searing phase is intensely focused.
It has to be. Because remember, the baseline, everyone is hangry. If any kid in the line is chatting or playing around or distracting the servers, the other students will instantly snap at them to fall in line.
The peer pressure.
Oh, the peer pressure to maintain efficiency is immense because any delay means a delay in eating. But there was one specific detail about the serving process that highlights the cultural hierarchy, or rather the temporary inversion of it. The students don't just serve each other, they serve the teacher.
This is a crucial element. The homeroom teacher doesn't eat in a staff break room. They eat in the classroom, sitting at a student desk that has been pushed into one of the pods, but the teacher does not get up to fetch their own tray.
No, the teacher stays seated. The tiny 6-year-old student lunch team prepares the tray and carries it directly to the teacher's desk, serving them like a guest of honor. During this 45-minute block, the kids are entirely in charge of the room. The traditional power dynamic completely flips.
They hold the authority and they take the enforcement of the rules very seriously.
Very seriously. There was a hilarious anecdote from one of the foreign teachers we look at. She was eating lunch with her class. She had finished her meal, wiped her mouth, and took her tray back up to the serving cart to be cleared. But stuck to the side of her rice bowl were 2 single smushed grains of rice.
Yeah.
She handed the bowl to the first grade lunch duty team.
And they rejected it.
They fiercely reprimanded her. These tiny children looked at the towering adult teacher, pointed at the 2 grains of rice, and refused to take the bowl. They scolded her until she took her chopsticks, painstakingly scraped those last 2 grains of rice off the porcelain, and ate them.
Wow.
She noted that while she was the undisputed authority during English class during school lunch, the students ran the show.
It perfectly illustrates how deeply the system embeds respect for the food, the farmers who grew it, and the labor required to prepare it. You do not waste food, not even 2 grains of rice.
Okay, so the gauntlet has been run. The cart survived the hallway. The portions were perfectly calculated. The teacher has been thoroughly humbled by a 6-year-old. What exactly is sitting on these kids' desks?
Well, this is the best part.
Because when you actually read the menus that these schools publish, it is staggering. It reads less like institutional school food and more like a trendy, hyper-local, farm-to-table pop-up restaurant in Brooklyn. Let's talk about the culinary quality, especially in the major urban centers like Tokyo. How high is the quality of this food, really?
The culinary standard is exceptionally high, and Tokyo is a prime example of this excellence. The baseline rule is that meals are almost entirely made from scratch. There is very little reliance on pre-made sauces or frozen entrees. Soups are made from real dashi broth boiled on-site.
Okay.
But where the system truly shines is in its sourcing. We talked about the American reliance on massive national supply chains. Japan, under the Shokuku mandate, heavily prioritizes local agriculture. According to recent agricultural data, an average of 56% of all ingredients used in Japanese school lunches are sourced locally from within the same prefecture or neighboring regions.
Over half the ingredients are locally sourced. Think about the logistical effort that requires. It's not just calling a massive distributor, it's building networks with local farming cooperatives.
Right, and it serves a dual purpose. It financially supports regional farmers, reducing the carbon footprint of food transport, making it environmentally sustainable, but pedagogically, it connects the children directly to the geography of where they live. They literally eat their local environment.
And they make sure the kids know exactly what they are eating. Before a single chopstick is lifted, after all the food is served, the lunch duty team stands at the front of the room and gives a presentation.
A full presentation.
Yeah, they don't just mumble, "Today we are having carrots and pork." They actually read the menu aloud, and they announce the specific named local farms where the vegetables were pulled from the dirt that very morning. They explain the nutritional value of the meal, the vitamin content, and the total caloric intake.
It's nutritional transparency built into a daily ritual.
I just love the mental image of a 7-year-old giving a sommelier-level presentation on a root vegetable. Like, notice the earthy undertones of today's daikon, harvested at 6 a.m. in the neighboring ward.
It's fantastic.
But honestly, some of the wards in Tokyo take this to an entirely different level. We have to talk about Adachi Ward.
Well, the dachi ward is famous in the Kyushoku world.
Famous is an understatement. For those listening who don't know Tokyo geography, Adachi Ward is in the northern part of the city. For a long time, it had a bit of a gritty reputation, but they decided to completely revolutionize their public image, and they did it through school lunches.
Yeah, they've really leaned into it.
Their food came so incredibly delicious, so restaurant quality, we're talking perfectly simmered yellowtail, handmade spring rolls, intricately seasoned rice dishes. The ward actually published a recipe book.
A recipe book for school lunches.
A full-color, glossy, commercially available cookbook featuring nothing but their public school lunch recipes. And it became a massive bestseller. People all over Japan were buying a textbook on how to cook like a Tokyo lunch lady.
It speaks to the immense pride taken in the culinary craft. It's not just about hitting a caloric target, it's about making the food genuinely delicious. And while Tokyo has incredible standards, when you look out into the rural prefectures, the regional menus become truly extraordinary.
The regional specialties made me so incredibly jealous. Because Japan is a long, mountainous archipelago, the local climates vary wildly, and the school lunches reflect that terroir. Let's look at Toyama Prefecture, which sits on the coast of the Sea of Japan, famous for its incredible seafood.
Oh, this one is amazing.
Once a year, the 6th graders in Toyama get a special lunch. They'll get fish sticks. Each 12-year-old gets an entire, whole, luxurious red snow crab served on their desk. A whole crab.
Which is an incredibly expensive delicacy. But the purpose isn't just to spoil the children with luxury. It's a hands-on biology and cultural lesson. Serving the whole crab forces the students to learn how to properly dismantle it, how to extract the meat without wasting it, and it instills a deep, visceral appreciation for the region's most famous marine resource. It connects their identity to the sea.
It's incredible. Then you go way up north to Sapporo in Hokkaido. The climate is much colder. They serve a dish featuring the saporoki onion. Now, this isn't just any onion. It is a rare heirloom variety that was nearly wiped out by agricultural disease decades ago, but local farmers fought to revive it. Hey.
So the schools take this culturally significant onion, slice it up, and fry it into a kakiage, a type of crispy vegetable tempura. The kids are quite literally eating a piece of their city's agricultural survival story.
Edible history lessons.
And then just north of Tokyo, in Saitama Prefecture, you have something much more blue-collar but equally beloved. It's a local soul food called jelly fry. Now, when I first read that, I was terrified. I pictured a deep-fried slab of strawberry jello, but it has absolutely nothing to do with gelatin.
No, the name is a linguistic corruption. It evolved from the word zeni, which means an old oval-shaped coin because of the shape of the food.
Right, it's essentially a thick oval croquette. But instead of just potato, it's made primarily of okara, which is the highly nutritious soybean pulp left over from making tofu. They mix the okara with potatoes and vegetables, deep fry it without any breading, and soak it in a rich Worcestershire-style sauce.
It sounds delicious. It was invented as a cheap, filling, protein-packed snack for textile workers during the industrial boom. By serving in schools today, they are keeping the working-class culinary history of the region alive.
These regional menus are the crown jewels of the Shokuku program. They foster regional pride. However, while every prefecture has its unique specialty, there are certain dishes that transcend geography. Dishes that are universally beloved from Hokkaido down to Okinawa.
The undisputed champion of the everyday Japanese school lunch. The meal that unites all generations, from grandparents to Gen Z curry rice.
Curry rice is foundational. It was introduced to Japan by the British via the British Indian Navy in the late 19th century, but it has evolved into a distinctly Japanese comfort food. It's thicker, sweeter, and less spicy than Indian curries.
And the kids go absolutely feral for it. There was a recent massive survey conducted by a major textbook publisher asking both current students and their parents to name their favorite school lunch. Curry rice was the overwhelming winner across the board. In a separate survey specifically polling Gen Z, it ranked number 2 overall.
It is perfectly engineered for the school lunch format. Because it's a thick stew, it's brilliant for hiding vast quantities of vegetables, carrots, potatoes, onions, making it highly nutritious. It's easy to serve in bulk, and it holds its heat well on the trolley.
But I think the secret weapon of curry rice is the aroma. Because these schools cook from scratch on site, the central kitchen starts simmering the curry roux by mid-morning. The ventilation systems pump that incredible warm, savory, spiced scent through the hallways.
That smell.
By 10:30 a.m., the entire school smells like curry. It literally acts as a morale booster. The kids smell it, they get excited to learn, they push through their morning classes because they know exactly what the reward is.
It creates a powerful, positive psychological association with the school environment. The school becomes a place that provides warmth and comfort. But as beloved as curry rice is as an everyday staple, there is another menu item. You mentioned the Gen Z survey, where curry ranked number 2.
I did.
So what took the number 1 spot? What beats the everyday champion?
Here is where the story takes a fantastic turn. Because in this highly regimented system, meticulously designed by clinical dietitians to be the absolute pinnacle of health, balance, and locally sourced vegetable consumption, well, the number 1, all-time favorite, undisputed king of the rare nostalgic school lunch menu is a nutritional anomaly called Age Pan.
Age Pan, it is legendary.
Let me describe this masterpiece for you because it is glorious. Age Pan literally translates to deep-fried bread. You take a coffee pan, which is essentially a slightly larger, softer hot dog bun. You drop that entire loaf of bread into a vat of hot oil, deep-fried until the outside develops a golden, crispy crust, and then you dredge the entire thing in granulated sugar, or kinako, which is a roasted, nutty, sweet soybean flour, or sometimes cocoa powder.
It is a massive, incredibly sweet, high-fat calorie bomb.
It is. It feels like a rogue carnival treat that somehow picked the lock and snuck past the nutritional guards at the gate. It defies all the logic of the 51% vegetable rule.
It does seem contradictory. But to understand why Age Pan is permitted and why it is so revered, you have to look at its origin story. Because it wasn't invented as a decadent dessert. It was invented as an act of profound empathy during a time of national crisis.
This origin story is amazing. It's like a superhero origin, but for a donut. Take us back to the beginning.
The year is 1952. We are at Mainmachi Elementary School in Oda Ward, Tokyo. This is the post-war era. Japan is still in the long, arduous process of rebuilding. Food scarcity is a real issue, and the school lunch program is not just educational, it is a vital lifeline keeping a generation of children from malnutrition.
Right.
At this time, the absolute staple carbohydrate of the lunch program is the basic kapapan bread roll. But in the winter of 1952, a severe flu epidemic sweeps through Tokyo.
Whole classrooms of kids are falling ill.
Exactly. Absenteeism skyrockets. Now, the school kitchens have already baked the daily quota of bread, and in 1952, under the strict rules of rationing and a culture that abhors waste, you do not simply throw away perfectly good bread.
The procedure back then was incredible. If a kid was sick at home, the school would task the healthy kids who lived nearby to literally deliver the leftover bread to the sick child's house after the school day ended. A rudimentary meal delivery service.
It was community care in action, but there was a glaring mechanical problem with the copy pan. It was a lean dough, meaning it dried out and became rock hard very quickly. By the time a healthy student delivered a plain roll to a sick classmate's house at 4 p.m., the bread was stale, cold, and entirely unappetizing.
And if you're a kid lying in bed with a 102-degree fever, the last thing you want to eat is a stale, dry piece of bread.
Enter school cook named Tsuneji Shinohara. Shinohara had previously worked as a Western-style chef, so he understood culinary technique. He saw these sick children refusing to eat the stale bread, and he knew they desperately needed the caloric energy to fight off the flu. He had to figure out a way to make leftover bread soft, delicious, and calorically dense enough to entice a sick child with zero appetite.
His solution was pure genius.
He realized that if he took the leftover bread and flash-fried it in oil, the heat and the fat would reintroduce moisture to the crumb, making the bread incredibly soft and rich again. And by immediately coating the hot fried bread in sugar, he created a flavor profile that even a feverish child couldn't resist.
It was literally medicine disguised as a dessert. He deep-fried the leftovers, sugared them up, and sent them home with the delivery kids. And it worked perfectly. The sick kids devoured it. But of course, a secret that delicious cannot be kept.
Of course not.
The healthy kids delivering the bread obviously took a bite, realized it was the greatest thing they had ever tasted, and demanded it be put on the regular menu.
It became an absolute sensation. The recipe spread from Oda Ward to the rest of Tokyo and eventually swept across the entire nation, becoming a beloved, albeit infrequent, treat.
And creating the perfect age pan is actually a highly specific culinary science. You can't just toss a bun in a deep fryer and walk away. The technical documentation for school kitchens details the exact parameters. Because the bread is already baked, if you leave it in the oil too long, it absorbs the fat like a sponge and becomes a greasy, heavy brick.
Irate.
It must be flash fried at precisely 180 to 190 degrees Celsius for exactly 1 minute. No more, no less.
That high heat creates an instant Maillard reaction on the crust, sealing the exterior so the oil doesn't penetrate deeply, while the ambient heat gently warms and fluffs the interior crumb. But the true magic of the recipe, the thing that elevates it from a sugary bun to a culinary masterpiece, is in the coating phase.
The kanako flavor.
Yeah.
When they coat it in the sweet soybean flour, the master's cooks don't just use sugar and kanako. To make it truly elite, they add a tiny microscopic pinch of salt to the sugar mixture.
This is a foundational culinary technique, leveraging what we call the contrast effect. When you introduce a trace amount of sodium to a highly sweet application, the salt crystals dissolve on the tongue first. This primes the sweet taste receptors, effectively amplifying the brain's perception of sweetness.
It's the exact same science behind putting a pinch of sea salt on a chocolate chip cookie, or salted caramel, or taking a bite of sharp cheddar cheese with apple pie. It maximizes the flavor profile without having to add more raw sugar.
It creates a complex, addictive flavor profile.
It is so incredibly good, and the nostalgia attached to it is so powerful that there is a fascinating, slightly ironic subculture thriving in Japan right now.
Oh, the nostalgia is huge.
The adults who grew up eating H-pan in the 80s and 90s are deeply, fiercely nostalgic for it. Because it was a rare treat, maybe served once a term, it holds legendary status. Today, you can walk through the trendy neon-lit streets of Harajuku and find artisanal food trucks frying up premium H-pan in organic coconut oil, and people are lining up to pay top dollar for it.
The nostalgia economy is massive. It gets crazier. There are actual Izakayas, Japanese drinking pubs, that are architecturally themed to look exactly like a 1990s elementary school classroom. You sit at tiny wooden desks, the menus are written on chalkboards, and businessmen in tailored suits go there after a long day at the corporate office to drink draft beer and eat heavily sugared H-pan. The irony of that situation is quite sharp when you contrast it with the current macroeconomic reality for actual public schools. While adults with disposable income are paying a premium for nostalgic deep-fried bread, the modern Kyushoku system is facing severe financial headwinds.
Yeah, the budget cuts.
Yes. Global inflation, supply chain disruptions, and particularly the rising cost of imported wheat have severely squeezed municipal school lunch budgets. Remember, the cost to parents is capped to keep it affordable.
Right.
So when the price of wheat spikes, the schools have to absorb the blow. In recent years, some school districts have struggled to afford any bread at all, forcing them to cut bread from the menu entirely and replace it with cheaper, domestically grown rice.
It's a harsh reality. The executives are eating the premium carnival version of the food, while the kids in the actual classrooms are losing it to inflation. But I think that scarcity highlights just how precious these specific meals are to the students. Which brings us to arguably the most intense, high-stakes segment of our deep dive.
This is the best part.
Because the food is so delicious, especially on a curry day or the mythical H-pan day, and because these kids have been fasting since 7 a.m., every single morsel of food is viewed as highly valuable real estate.
Nothing is taken for granted.
Right. So inevitably, a situation arises.
Right.
A student is out sick with a cold, the kitchen set up 30 portions of H-pan, but there are only 29 kids in the room. There is one extra piece of deep-fried, sugared perfection sitting on the serving trolley, or there's one extra cold bottle of milk. What happens?
Yeah, what do they do?
In an American cafeteria, this would result in chaos. A mad dash, a physical scramble, someone getting shoved into a table. How do the Japanese decide who gets the extra food without it devolving into a cafeteria riot?
Well, it is the exact opposite of a riot. It triggers a highly formalized, intensely competitive, yet deeply respectful ritual. And to understand the mechanics of this ritual, we have to unpack a philosophical pillar of Japanese society, motenai.
Motenai. It's often translated simply as don't waste.
Right, that is the functional translation, but it lacks the spiritual depth of the concept. Motenai is an ancient concept with roots in both Shintoism and Buddhism. It conveys a profound sense of regret concerning the waste of a resource.
Okay.
It is the belief that every object, and certainly every piece of food, contains a spirit and essence and represents the hard labor of the natural world and the people who harvested it. To throw away edible food is not just a financial loss, it is a moral failing. It is a violation of the natural order.
So throwing that extra piece of H-pan in the trash is culturally unacceptable. It must be consumed.
Exactly. So when there is a surplus, the lunch duty team doesn't just quietly slip it to their friends. They pause the meal. The 6-year-old leader of the Tobin team stands at the front of the room and formally announces the surplus to the class. We have 1 extra H-pan and 2 extra milks.
And the classroom erupts. The energy shifts instantly. They enter the gladiatorial arena. But it's an organized arena. They decide the winner through the ultimate arbiter of playground justice Janken. Rock, paper, scissors.
But this is not a casual game. Janken in Japan carries much more cultural weight than rock, paper, scissors does in the West. It is used by adults to settle disputes, make corporate decisions, and allocate resources. It is viewed as the purest distillation of fairness, leaving the outcome entirely to fate.
And in the classroom, the Janken tournament has incredibly strict rules of engagement. You cannot just jump up and play because you feel like it. Rule number 1, which is strictly enforced. Only students who have completely finished every single bite of their initial plate are allowed to enter the tournament.
It's conditional participation.
Exactly. If you still have a flurry of broccoli sitting in your bowl or a spoonful of soup left, you are disqualified. You cannot play for the dessert if you haven't finished your vegetables. It is brilliant behavioral incentivization. Suddenly kids are speed-eating their spinach just to buy a ticket to the H-Pan lottery.
And who referees this high-stakes tournament?
The lunch duty kids. The tiny 6-year-olds in the white smocks stand at the front and orchestrate the rounds. They pair the kids up, they call the cadence, Yan, Ken, Pon, and they eliminate the losers round by round until only one champion remains.
And what is most fascinating from a sociological perspective is the immediate aftermath of the tournament. The emotional regulation required is immense.
It really is. In the US, if a kid loses a game for a prize, there's usually a negotiation phase. Best 2 out of 3. You cheated. You went early.
But in the Japanese classroom, the acceptance of the outcome is absolute. Once the final rock crushes the final scissors, the result is final. The winner walks up to the trolley, claims their prize, and the losers instantly accept defeat. There is no whining, there is no appealing to the teacher. They sit back down. It is a daily, low-stakes exercise in emotional regulation, sportsmanship, and accepting the whims of fate while maintaining the harmony of the group.
It's beautiful to watch. And the craziest part is, the most fiercely contested item in these tournaments isn't always the dessert. Very often, the most brutal Janken battles are fought over the extra milk.
Milk holds a very specific status in the Kyushoku system.
It does. It's served in these nostalgic, thick glass bottles. It is heavily fortified, and ever since the post-war era, it has been drilled into the national consciousness as the absolute essential building block for calcium, bone density, and childhood growth. The kids are utterly obsessed with it.
It is the one constant of the meal. The food changes daily, but the milk is always there.
There is this heartbreaking yet hilarious anecdote from the American teacher that perfectly captures the milk obsession. It was the middle of winter, and a massive unexpected snowstorm hit Tokyo overnight. The roads were completely jammed.
Right.
The food for the central kitchen had arrived the day before, so they can cook the lunch. But the daily delivery truck carrying the glass bottles of milk got stuck in the snow and couldn't make it to the school.
A logistical break in the chain.
When lunchtime rolled around and the kids realized there was no milk in the trolley, they were devastated. The teacher said some of the first graders were quietly weeping at their desks. Real tears. She tried to comfort them with American optimism. She clapped her hands and said, "Hey guys, it's no big deal. It's just one day. We have the tap. We can just drink water with our lunch today."
How did that go over?
She said they looked at her like she was an absolute alien, like she had just suggested they drink battery acid. Their expressions clearly said, "You fundamentally do not understand the gravity of the crisis we are facing."
Poor kids.
They drank the water out of pure necessity, but the mourning period lasted all day. Even 45 minutes later, as they were putting their coats on to run out to the snowy playground for recess, she could hear them muttering to each other, "What a tragedy about the milk, a dark day."
It's humorous, but it underscores how deeply ingrained these specific routines become in a child's psyche. The meal is not just sustenance, it is a structural pillar of their daily existence. When that pillar is missing, their entire day feels destabilized.
Okay, we spent a lot of time painting a picture of what sounds like an absolute public health utopia.
Yeah.
We have Michelin-star menus featuring red snow crab, obesity rates hovering under 5%, brilliant pedagogical lessons in teamwork and spatial reasoning, and these adorable high-stakes rock, paper, scissors tournaments.
Right.
But you and I both know that no system is perfect. Every system, no matter how meticulously engineered, has an Achilles heel. So I have to push back here.
Please do.
We've established that the core strength of this system is its absolute uniformity. Everyone eats the exact same thing. But we live in reality. What if you are a kid with severe lactose intolerance and the school is forcing a glass bottle of milk on you every day?
That's a valid point.
What if you have a life-threatening peanut allergy? What if your family is strictly vegan? Or you practice a religion that forbids the consumption of pork, which, looking at these menus, is used as a base flavor in almost all the soups and side dishes. This rigid, one-size-fits-all approach has to break down somewhere.
Yeah, you are exactly right to push back, because this is the undeniable dark side of the Kyushoku system. The very mechanism that makes it so cheap, so equal, and so effective at building community, the uncompromising uniformity, well, it makes it an absolute nightmare for anyone who falls outside the statistical norm.
How bad is it? Do the schools accommodate these kids? If a kid is allergic to eggs, does the kitchen just whip up an egg-free version of the dish for them?
Historically, and even largely today in many municipalities, no. Special diets are generally not catered for by the central kitchen. The system is designed to produce 500 identical meals, not 499 identical meals, and one specialized allergy plate.
That's rough.
The logistical strain and liability of preventing cross-contamination in a kitchen designed for bulk uniformity is deemed too high. So the burden falls entirely on the family.
Okay, so the mom just packs a lunchbox and sends the kid to school, right?
It is not that simple. You
Right.
cannot just send your kid to school with a bento box because you want to. The system views the school lunch as a mandatory class. You wouldn't just let a kid opt out of math class because they prefer to do different worksheets from home. To opt out of Kyushoku, you have to be formally granted permission.
What does that process look like?
If it is a medical allergy, the parents must subject the child to an annual blood test. They have to get a doctor's official stamped medical certificate detailing the exact allergens. They must submit this bureaucratic paperwork to the school administration, have a formal meeting, and only then are they granted a medical waiver that permits the child to bring a packed lunch from home.
Wow.
And because children's physiologies change, this exhausting bureaucratic hurdle has to be cleared every single year.
That is an immense amount of red tape, just to ensure your child doesn't go into anaphylactic shock. And what if the restriction isn't medical? What if it's a deeply held ethical belief like veganism or a religious dietary law?
For non-medical diets, the friction is even higher. It usually requires formal, elevated approval from the Municipal Board of Education. The system is fundamentally not designed for modern inclusivity. We have to look at the history. The system was scaled up after World War II to feed a highly homogeneous population facing universal food scarcity. It was built for a monolith.
That makes sense.
As modern Japan slowly becomes more globalized, more culturally diverse, and as international dietary standards shift, the rigid architecture of the Kyushoku system is resisting that change.
And even if you don't have a medical allergy or a religious restriction, there is a profound psychological toll to this uniformity. We talked earlier about the intense peer pressure to clean your plate so you can enter the Janken tournament. That sounds fun if you're just being a little stubborn about broccoli, but what if you are a kid with a genuinely small appetite who physically cannot consume 10.5 items?
Or what if you have a severe sensory processing aversion to certain textures?
Exactly. There was a comment on one of the historical articles we sourced that really stuck with me. A former teacher was talking about a dish featuring yamaimo, which is a type of mountain yam. When you grate yamaimo, it doesn't stay solid. It develops this incredibly gooey, slimy, highly mucilaginous texture. It is a very polarizing mouthfeel, even for adults.
Definitely an acquired taste.
This teacher vividly recounted witnessing students literally gagging, tears in their eyes, forced to sit at their desks and consume this gooey yam because the social pressure from the teachers and the student lunch duty team to achieve a completely empty plate was absolute.
It's the shadow side of communal responsibility. When the collective harmony and the rules of the system are prized above all else, individual boundaries, even visceral physical boundaries like appetite limits or sensory gag reflexes, are often overridden. Yes, the system effectively cures picky eating for the majority, but it can induce serious, lasting dietary anxiety for a child who simply cannot conform to the texture of a mountain yam.
It is a fascinating, complex trade-off. You are trading individual autonomy, dietary choice, and personal comfort for massive, undeniable public health benefits, rock-bottom obesity rates, and an unparalleled daily education in empathy, labor, and community.
If we synthesize everything we've explored today, it truly forces us to reevaluate the American model. The Western approach prioritizes individual choice and logistical convenience above all else, but we are paying a catastrophic price in public health and nutritional cohesion.
Yeah, the 20% obesity rate.
Exactly. The Japanese model sacrifices individual choice entirely. It demands conformity and physical labor from its children, but it engineers a society that is measurably healthier, remarkably resourceful, and deeply intimately connected to the land and the people who produce its food.
It really makes you look at a simple plastic cafeteria tray differently.
It does, and it leaves us with a provocative thought to ponder. We've looked at the data, we've heard the firsthand accounts, we've analyzed the history. What would happen to our own society's relationship with food, with environmental waste, and with our neighbors if we completely dismantled the cafeteria?
What a concept.
What if we treated lunchtime not as a loud, chaotic break from school, but as the most important, most rigorous, most vital class of the day? Could teaching a 6-year-old the heavy physical responsibility of serving hot soup to their peers actually change the health trajectory of an entire nation?
It is a wild, paradigm-shifting thought. Imagine the U.S. treating lunch with the same academic rigor as an AP biology class. It would fundamentally change our entire culture. So the next time you're standing in a food court or a cafeteria line, deciding whether to grab the greasy pizza slice or the chicken patty, take a second. Imagine tying on a crisp white apron, scrubbing your hands and stepping into a bustling Tokyo elementary school classroom.
Just imagine it.
Imagine the smell of the curry wafting through the halls. Just make sure you practice your rock, paper, scissors strategy in the mirror first, because if it comes down to it, I'm absolutely not letting you win that extra piece of HPN.
Good luck with that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the everyday things around you, stay curious, and keep exploring the fascinating, sometimes delicious ways the world works. See you next time.